Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with our guest AI Geek. And today we're diving into your thoughts about creating a digital twin, which you are calling Eric 2.0.
Hello, everyone.
This is a really fascinating project you've got going on here.
It is.
And basically, you want to build a twin that not only knows all the facts about your life, but also can accurately answer questions about your relationships, your feelings towards others.
That's it.
That's a pretty ambitious goal, a very ambitious goal. And you've identified the two key approaches, training a local large language model, LLM.
And using retrieval augmented generation, or RAG.
Okay. Yeah, those two seem to be the big contenders here.
They are the most common approaches.
So for someone who's maybe, new to this, could you break those down a little bit?
Of course.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of each, especially for someone who's prioritizing privacy and keeping everything local?
So imagine training an LLM like teaching a student.
Okay.
You feed it massive amounts of your data, emails, journals, chats, and it learns to mimic your style, your tone, even your sense of humor. The benefit here is that the LLM develops an understanding of how you communicate and why you make certain decisions.
Okay. So it's like the LLM is learning your personality,
Exactly.
not just memorizing facts.
Exactly. But here's the catch. LLMs have limitations. They have something called a context window, which means they can only hold a certain amount of information in mind at once. Think of it like short-term memory.
Gotcha.
Trying to stuff an LLM with every single detail of your life would overload it.
Makes sense.
That's where RAG comes in.
Okay. So RAG is like giving the LLM a long-term memory boost.
Precisely. With RAG, you create a separate searchable database, sometimes called a vector store, that stores all those specific details about your life, dates, names, locations, events, things that would overwhelm an LLM's context window. Then, when your twin needs a specific fact, it can quickly retrieve it from this database using something like FAISS,
Hold on. FICE, that's a new one.
right? Apologies. FAISS is a library specifically designed for efficient similarity search. It's great at quickly sifting through large amounts of data to find the most relevant information, making it perfect for this kind of retrieval task.
So instead of trying to crank everything into the LLM's brain,
Exactly.
you use RAG to give it a resource library it can access when needed.
Precisely. It's a bit like giving your digital twin access to Google, but for its own personalized knowledge base.
Oh, I see what you mean. But if we're not feeding the LLM all the detailed facts, how can it answer those nuanced questions about relationships and feelings?
That's the heart of the challenge, and where training the LLM becomes crucial.
Okay,
The goal is to train the LLM to understand your implicit sentiments, your underlying opinions about people, even if they're not explicitly stated in your data.
how do you even begin to do that? It sounds like teaching a computer to read between the lines.
It is a bit like that. You need to think about how you will organize your data for training. You mentioned using a framework of who, what, when, and where, how, and why. Elements like who, when, and where are great for RAG, storing factual data about people, times, and locations. But for training the LLM, we focus on the how and the why.
Okay, so how would be my communication style?
Precisely.
Like if I'm brief in emails, the LLM would learn to respond in a similar way.
Precisely. And the why is about your motivations, your reasons for doing things, your values. That's crucial for the LLM to learn how to make inferences about your feelings toward others, even if you haven't written it down explicitly.
This is where it gets tricky, right?
You're right.
Because our feelings are often complex
They are very complex.
and sometimes even contradictory.
Absolutely. And this is where the limitations of relying solely on RAG become clear. Even if you have data about every interaction you've had with someone, it might not capture the full picture of your relationship. Maybe you rarely email someone, but always go out of your way to help them when they need it.
Or maybe you're super friendly with someone on social media, but actually can't stand them in person.
Exactly. Those are the nuances that are tough to capture with purely factual data, right?
The LLM needs to be able to go beyond the surface and infer those deeper meanings. So How do we teach an LLM to make those kinds of judgments?
It's about finding subtle patterns in your data that reveal your underlying sentiment. For example, we could analyze your emails to see how often you use positive or negative language when discussing certain people,
So if I constantly complain about someone's lateness, right, the LLM might infer that I find them unreliable.
right? But it's not just about individual words. We can also look at the context of your interactions.
Okay,
What kind of requests do you make of certain people? Do you delegate tasks to them? Do you ask them for advice?
I guess those actions speak louder than words sometimes.
Exactly. The LLM needs to be able to piece together all these different clues to build up a nuanced understanding of your relationships and your personality.
This is fascinating, but it also sounds incredibly complex.
It is.
Where do we even start with training an LLM to do all of this?
Well, the first step is to choose the right data for training. We need data that reveals not just what you do, but how you do it and why. We need data that reflects your thought process, your decision, your style, your values.
So, emails, journals,
Exactly.
maybe even things like project plans or to-do lists.
Exactly. The richer and more diverse the data, the better the LLM can learn to think like you.
This is a lot to take in, but it's incredibly exciting. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with digital twins.
We are. And as we continue to develop these technologies, the line between human and machine will become increasingly blurred.
Yeah, this is a great point to kind of pause and consider the implications of all of this. It seems like we're entering a whole new era of personalized AI.
Absolutely.
We were talking about the challenges of teaching an LLM to understand the nuances of human relationships, the things that aren't always explicitly stated in our data.
It's a complex problem. Even with sophisticated sentiment analysis, we're still limited by the data we have.
Right?
We can infer some things from your communication patterns, but what if you need your digital twin to answer a question about someone you rarely interact with directly?
That's a good point. Like, what if I asked my twin, should I invite so and so to this event, but I haven't emailed them in years? How could the LLM possibly know if they'd be a good fit?
This is where we have to start thinking about how to incorporate a broader understanding of human behavior and social dynamics into the LLM's training.
Okay?
It's not enough to just analyze your individual interactions. We need to give the LLM a framework for understanding how people generally relate to each other.
So, almost like teaching it some basic psychology.
In a way, yes, we could start by introducing concepts like social groups, hierarchies, and shared interests. For example, the LLM could learn that people who work together are more likely to be friendly with each other, or that people who share hobbies often have similar values.
That makes sense. But how do we actually translate those abstract concepts into something the LLM can use?
One approach is to create a kind of social graph that maps out the relationships between people in your life. This graph could include information about how you met each person, how often you interact with them, what activities you do together, and so on.
So, almost like a Facebook friend network,
Yes,
but with more detail about the nature of each relationship.
that's a good analogy. The LLM could use this social graph to infer things about people you haven't interacted with directly. For example, if you're close friends with someone who works with the person you're asking about, the LLM might assume that you have a generally positive opinion of that person.
That's really clever, but I can also see how that could lead to some inaccurate assumptions.
You're right.
Just because two people work together doesn't mean they like each other.
That's why it's important to build in safeguards to prevent the LLM from making overly simplistic generalizations.
Okay?
We need to teach it to consider multiple factors and to recognize that human relationships are complex and often unpredictable.
So it's not just about feeding the LLM more data.
Exactly.
It's about teaching it to think critically about that data and to make nuanced judgments.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest challenges in AI development right now: how to create systems that can not only process information, but also understand its meaning and context.
It sounds like we're a long way from having digital twins that can truly understand us on that level.
We may never get there completely, But every step we take toward that goal is a step toward creating AI that is more human centered and more aligned with our values.
This raises an interesting question, and it's one that I know many people are concerned about. If we're teaching LLMs to make judgments about people, so how do we ensure that those judgments are fair and unbiased?
That's a crucial point, and it's something that we need to be very mindful of as we develop these technologies. One way to mitigate bias is to carefully curate the training data
Okay?
and to make sure that it represents a diverse range of perspectives.
So if my social circle is very homogeneous, the LLM might make inaccurate assumptions about people from different backgrounds.
Yes, that's a risk. We need to make sure that the LLM is exposed to a wide range of social groups, cultures, and viewpoints, right? Otherwise, it will simply perpetuate the biases that already exist in society.
That makes sense. It's like teaching a child about the world.
Exactly,
And if they only ever interact with people who are just like them, they're going to have a very limited and potentially skewed understanding of humanity.
exactly. It's our responsibility as developers to ensure that the AI systems we create are as fair and inclusive as possible.
It sounds like we have a long way to go before we can create digital twins that are truly representative of who we are. But the possibilities are incredibly exciting.
They are.
I think it's time for another break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk more about the implications of all this for the future of AI.
Sounds good.
We've been talking about this idea of digital twins, and I have to say, this deep dive has really sparked my imagination. It's clear that creating a truly representative digital twin is about so much more than just, data storage and retrieval. We're talking about capturing the essence of what makes us human.
Absolutely.
You know, our values, our biases, our complex social connections.
It is a profound undertaking. As we delve deeper into these technologies, we're forced to confront some fundamental questions about what it means to be human. Can we truly replicate the nuances of human thought and feeling in a machine? And if so, what are the implications for our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world?
That's a lot to ponder. But before we get too philosophical, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay?
The practical applications of all of this. Let's say we can overcome these challenges and create digital twins that can actually represent our personalities, our relationships. How might we use them in our daily lives?
The potential applications are vast. Imagine having a digital twin that could help you make decisions, manage your time, or even navigate complex social situations. For example, your twin could analyze your calendar and suggest the best time to schedule a meeting, taking into account not only your availability, but also the preferences of the other people involved.
That would be incredibly helpful. I'm always struggling to find a time that works for everyone, especially when you have, 5, 6, 7 people involved.
Right? Or imagine using your digital twin to help you prepare for a job interview.
Okay?
It could analyze the company's culture and the interviewer's background to suggest talking points and strategies for making a good impression.
Wow, that would take a lot of the stress out of interviewing, but it also raises some ethical questions.
It does.
Um, would it be fair to use a digital twin to gain an advantage in that kind of situation?
That's a valid concern. And as with any powerful technology, there's always the potential for misuse. It'll be important to establish clear ethical guidelines for the development and use of digital twins to ensure that they are used responsibly and for the benefit of humanity.
It sounds like we're just at the beginning of a very long and complex journey.
We are, but it's an incredibly exciting journey filled with both challenges and opportunities. As we continue to explore the potential of digital twins, we'll undoubtedly learn as much about ourselves as we do about the technology itself.
This has been a really enlightening deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the complexities of creating a digital twin. And more importantly, I've started to think about the implications of this technology for the future of humanity.
That's what we hope to achieve. It's not just about building machines that can think like us. It's about using those machines to help us better understand ourselves and our place in the world. And if I'm honest, that's the reason why I got into AI in the first place.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of digital twins. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of the cutting edge of AI and human experience. Until then, keep exploring and stay curious.